I need a grave digger.
Hi, Zizaran here with another video, and in this we're going to go over the patch notes. I have another video going over the entire thing raw and edited. This is going to be a TLDR of what I thought was most important, and we do have another video going over the Necropolis changes in the upcoming league itself. So written down everything that I think was pretty impactful, and there were a lot of balance changes, especially to like smaller things. Ascendancies did not get a lot of changes. A lot of people were hoping for Gladiator and Assassin buffs and stuff like that. There were quite a lot of nerfs to Pathfinder, so that maybe dethrones that a little bit at the top. And we will also be going over gems and new skills later when we have the full information on all of those. I think we're still missing a few. But yeah, let's get right into the actual balance changes. So let's start with the big hitter nerfs. Penance Brand of Dissipation is heavily nerfed. It is very likely still a great build, but what's going to become very apparent is its clear speed issues. So this is something we'll probably see people do for like uber boss killers, especially on Soul Self and Hardcore and Sanctum runners, but maybe something that people are now needing more of an investment with. The reason the skill is still so strong is because brands offer such insane mobility where you can focus on dodging and not getting hit by the boss. Tornado Shot got a very heavy baseline nerf. I've seen a lot of people that said it's dead. Honestly, I'm not even the best person to talk about this because it's not something I use that much. It's more of a softcore blaster skill. Now, personally, when it comes to nerfs and buffs, I'm a big fan of buffing anything that was very rarely used. Some exceptions like, you know, DD, like any racer skill and stuff like that. Very, very few people use DD, but we do see it at the top of the line in races. So not just what people are using the most, but, you know, you do have like a good feel for like, this is really strong right now and this is really weak right now. And I love seeing a big shift every 2 leagues. So, you know, when everything's like Seismic, DD, Tornado Shot, etc. has been very strong for more than 2 leagues. I love it when they get like a big nerf and we see other things come to replace them that haven't been used before. There should always be something to fill that void that it leaves behind that is equally fun, but I think it's healthy for the game when what that thing is changes roughly every 2 leagues. Plus minus 1 doesn't always hurt. Kinetic Bolt of Fragmentation got hit pretty hard as well. Definitely forced to use Crown of Eyes for that. Might still be usable though. Sniper's Mark got double nerfed. It's got less damage at level 20 and 2 less projectiles. Also makes it slightly less potent for the effect because when it starts that high, the effect is even stronger. So very high nerf to Splitting Steel single target. So that's probably what people will probably not play that as much. Might be okay for the early levels to level new characters, however. Ball Lightning of Static got completely deleted. Its interaction with totems got removed, as well as a lot of the Archmage interactions will not work with brands or orb skills. This is why you always want to be careful with investing too much time into what works, what doesn't work before a league actually happens, because you do end up, like, in my opinion, wasting a lot of time with it. I think the nerfs make sense because there wasn't much downside to it. It was just like the obvious way to play it and very strong. And GGG are very known for if something's very obvious and something's like the only way to do things, then they do get hit a lot. Though Reddit called out totems and melee being like, well, this is obviously what to do on every melee character. Shouldn't that be changed? And I think that's very true. Archmage, however, got a very big buff in a lot of other ways. So I think we are seeing a lot of Archmage builds this league, but we'll talk more about that later. Cleave of Rage got its AoE nerfed. It was hitting 1.5 screens, so I mean, it does make sense, but it's also melee. It's not exactly in a great space, and the best way to make melee not shit is, well, make it not melee. Melee is always, by definition, going to be inferior to ranged, just because would you rather have a knife or a gun? Right? So you do always have to like artificially make it strong a lot of the time. An easy fix for that is to give it more ranged and quality of life. And we have seen, like, you know, things like Fortify is supposed to breach that gap. Guardian gets a fairly deserved nerf on Radiant Crusade. It was very overtuned, especially the fact that it could carry in tier 16 maps. It should still feel very good early and carry very heavily during the campaign. Probably be an okay starter for a lot of people. However, relying on its damage for clearing maps and stuff will be harder. Maybe need, I don't think it lost the scaling from life. It's just down from 30 to 20. Speaking of Guardian, SRS got a very big nerf specifically to hit-based. Poison, dot, etc. These should be fine, and especially Popcorn SRS actually got a big buff. Got completely unaffected by all the nerfs, and it frankly has just been buffed. And Poison is very strong too, just because the new way the Unholy Might works. Hit-based SRS got a very large nerf. That means that the champion SRS is very likely not worth playing, at least. I don't know if it's fully dead. Very often when a skill is nerfed, people just write it off completely. I'm not saying that's necessarily the case here, but it's probably not worth playing as a starter, because there will be so many other things that are stronger. And the hit-based nerf is 39% less damage plus some other stuff. For buffs, Necro gets Life Leech from minions, and I'm assuming that'll work on the SRS pop. However, that node has a bit of a downside for the Popcorn SRS, because it has life as extra energy shield, and that doesn't actually come into the explosion. So if it's 40% more life again here, that would be kind of crazy. But this should be very strong, and it should combo with the 10% instant leech mastery, making Necro a very tanky ascendancy. Whenever you get to the point that you don't instantly die, it should fill back up very quickly. So Spectres should be very strong this patch. We've seen some cool Spectre items, and there are new Spectres as well that could be really strong. And obviously the Popcorn SRS, that is most likely what I am league starting myself. Archmage, we did mention this in the nerf section, but let's talk about it a little bit more here. It seems very good. Now, an interesting thing from what I understand of Archmage, and I haven't used it lately, but I think it's less about spending the mana and more about having the mana, making it stronger for Archmage and stuff like that. And it's less about scaling with things like Indigon, I think. I think you probably still will use Indigon, and you can still build around that. But it now has supported skills gain added lightning damage equal to 10% of the unreserved maximum mana, up to 19. The same with like the mana cost is gone from the quality, and the quality 0 to 10 spell damage instead. And the change here is that the mana cost is now based on your 5% of your unreserved mana and not just your maximum. But we've seen a lot of people will be theory crafting builds for Archmage, and yeah, it should be interesting to see what people come up with. Hopefully this brings it a little bit into the spotlight. So again, the TLDR of the new Archmage, less about how much you're spending and more about what you have. And this makes it very strong for a mana investment. So you can do more on Mind Over Matter and having that shield your life. Essence Drain of Desperation has gotten a buff. Don't tempt me. No, I don't know. I mean, Chaos Kills still, in my opinion, have a bit of an issue with the fact that it needs such an investment into damage that I feel is generally better on other builds. So, I don't know. I will always look into Chaos Kills because I think they're fun, but they do have to be worth it as well. Frostblink gained a bunch of added damage effectiveness, and they did kill one of the Frostblink builds with Poet's Pen, which was sad, but yeah. Flame Golems got a sizable buff. I do want to look into that. Blade Blast of Dagger Detonation got a buff, and honestly, quite a lot of different skills got buffed. I think they've been doing pretty good at changing the mid-game and end-game in a lot of patches. A lot of that is also from new things introduced in leagues. But the leveling meta has been like, you know, the leveling meta isn't like that insane. I don't think... there is a bit of a shakeup here. Probably more of a shakeup than we're used to, at least. But we do see things like EA... SRS Boom Boom, I guess, is sort of new. Probably Wave of Conviction. We'll have a lot of different starters up, but it isn't too different on the day 1 to 2 stuff. We'll see what people come up with. As for items, Relicash's boots got the MS removed. Not a huge fan of that. I was actually expecting it to see it move up a tier in rarity to tier 0, which I know not everybody's a big fan of, but I do love when the tier 0 items are really strong, and I would rather see that than it lose its 30% MS. And at least the combo is still incredibly strong. The what Relicash's boots is so good with is like the Maven belts, for example, where you not only get to keep Frenzy, Endurance, and Power charges, but you get a new charge as long as you can generate it. So you get to use that special Maven charge. And that's been very strong for like dot builds, for a lot of different builds. It's just really fun and just a cool way for an item to work. My gloves got buffed. There was a Soul Eater rework. It now caps at 45, which I believe is 270% increased attack speed, something like that. This is also good for us on monsters. So monsters basically is capped at 90% physical damage reduction, but also they're capped at the 270% attack speed. So they can't get like hundreds and hundreds of Soul Eater stacks. Now Soul Eater like naturally falls off after a few seconds of not gaining them, And my gloves have -10 or +10 Soul Eater stacks now, so they've been changed. These are dropped from Uber Elder, and now they also generate charges faster than before, and they generate them twice as fast. So it's like 20 or 25 seconds to go to cap. Oh, and with 55 charges, so not 45, but with 55 charges, it's 275% attack speed, especially if you're using Wiltman's Requital, because increases the reductions to cast speed also apply to attack speed. And Soul Eater gives you attack speed, and it gives you cast speed. So, and it doesn't, if I remember right, it's not attack and cast speed. Now, obviously, gaining the Soul Eater is harder on a totem build, but if you're spamming Frenzy or something on monsters, it shouldn't be too hard to keep up, and would give you, well, just 550 attack speed, which is pretty cool if you're doing Artillery Ballista Totem or something like that. But either way, even just for actual builds now, they are pretty okay to use for everything now, and they scale pretty fast. So glad they buffed them. That was nice. Thanks. Stack deck and divination cards cannot drop boss related items anymore. The purpose of this is that a lot of people are getting frustrated that would be saying boss drops and uniques before the boss were actually killed. So for example, a Starforge would maybe be like 5C with like 20 on the market before anyone had actually gotten 2 maps. And that was a lot of because stack decks and diviners would give that, and now Starforge has been moved to Uber Shaper, so that's probably for the best. It is obviously, at least in my opinion, very important that boss drops are special and really sought after, and if they're super easy to get from divination cards, that's a little bit weird. Now, that being said, we do still have the Voidborn Reliquary keys, and we have the Valdos maps, and they will still drop them. Obviously very RNG from the Voidborns, and also requires an actual challenge from the Valdos maps, so less of an issue. Now the Void has been changed as well. They didn't really clarify completely, but from what it seems, I'm assuming that the Void now only drops from bosses, which they said, but I also would assume then that it only gives a boss drop uniques, so that could be pretty exciting. Like, that makes it a very cool card. What it used to do was any reward from any other divination card. There are a lot of Atlas tree changes, and more importantly, the biggest change is that we can now have 3 Atlas trees. This is huge, and we will be making a separate video with a lot of different Atlas trees that would be good to use. There are a lot of other random changes that stand out. Obviously, we had a lot of quality of life, but we did lose a lot of things too, so I'll go over some of those. We have lost Warichi white sockets. We will have Omens and Harvest, but we don't have a good way to get white sockets on gear anymore, which honestly, a little bit of a pain in my opinion. I thought they were moving more towards letting us have things like that, because sockets are going away on gear in PoE 2 anyway, so maybe they just wanted to make PoE 1 a little bit easier in that regard but that seems not to be the case. Another really cool thing is that Kirak offers every map crafting option now, and the 7th gate is gone. It was a little bit of a roller coaster for me. I was like, oh no, they removed 7th gate. Oh no, they just gave that as base behavior. So that was really cool. This is way better, and yeah, we have a lot more agency now over what we actually want to do with the scarabs and the map options, and so cool. Really interesting what they've done this league. Gem XP rare mod is gone, and if you don't know what that meant, that was maybe sometimes you saw all of your gems, maybe even right after they're leveled, will level up all at the same time. This was a conversion mod, and this meant that gems would be leveling up very quickly. We would have gems at level 20, anywhere between the character being level 91 and 93, whereas back in the past, before we had this conversion mod, which it basically converts all the things that the monster drops into XP. Before this came in the game, it would take us roughly to between 94 and 96 before gems hit level 20 for the first time. I am a little bit surprised that this is gone. I did think this was a really good thing. It's definitely something I'm going to bring up on my podcast with Neon and ask, because it will change things a lot for gems. Alt arts can now be consumed and be turned into actually MTX. I'm very excited for this. Something I've been asking for every day since race seasons were a thing, and I've been like any time since I've been able to communicate with GTD, I was like, hey, this would be sick for me. And those of us that do have race awards, and I'm a little bit copium here, but I'm hoping this means that they maybe want to start doing race rewards where you can win MTX in the future. That'd be very cool. Tattoos are nerfed, but they are back in the game. I'm very happy that we do get to keep them, even if we do lose some of the more powerful ones like Suppression and Explode, but we do still have loads of good ones So that's very cool. Elemental flasks in general got changed and in a lot of ways nerfed. They are buffed in some ways too, because max res when you don't have 90 max res is very strong. So getting that back is strong for a lot of builds. But we've seen like the Mage Blood mod of you can get 20% more res is now max instead of 40 max res. So that's changed, and yeah, just some changes in general to flasks. We've also, more importantly, lost the 25% less mana cost during flask effect. Now, what all these changes does is basically Pathfinder might not be the single strongest thing anymore. However, this is also a little bit of a buff to Transcendence, which Pathfinder is pretty good at using. So I don't know, we'll see. Pathfinder should still be quite strong. And there's a new belt that's really interesting, making things like the Maven Flask really easy to sustain. With you can get 3 flash charges every 3 seconds. Map device 5th slot now unlocks when you complete a tier 17 map instead of a Legion thing. It's a little bit weird. Does that mean you can never do a 5-way Legion unless you've done a tier 17 map? We really don't know if this is going to be slower or faster, but it probably will be slower. Like, the tier 17 maps looked very dangerous, and you can still buy completions from other players. And there's been more mana nerfs. I am assuming this is because of Adorned, but we did see that the 5% reduced mana cost on Jewels is gone. I am a little bit sad of that, because I love power that actually takes something to obtain, and the Adorned very much does take effort to obtain. It's not something that's completely free. So I don't like power that is like, you know, no investment at all. For example, the Suicide Totems or Penance Brand of Indecision, or sorry, Penance Brand of Dissipation was maybe a little bit too strong. Definitely the Explodey build at least. Whereas like things that actually require you to grind out, plan things out, and do something interesting, that is pretty okay. Either way, this is my TLDR of the patch notes. I hope you guys enjoy my thoughts on light videos like this, and I hope you guys are gonna have a blast in the upcoming league. It looks awesome. Lots of new bosses and cool things, so I'm very excited. Either way, thank you so much for watching. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.